Welcome to this morning's plenary session. My name is Mark Pickle. I'm the Chief Technology Officer at Biltmore, which is a family-owned company that operates Biltmore Estate for the last 123 years. So thank you for coming back. One of the primary reasons I'm in attendance today is to hear our next speaker, Ed Skoudis. So it's a great privilege to introduce Ed to you if you don't already know him. Ed is a leading professional, ethical hacker. He's a teaching fellow at the SANS Institute, which is a private U.S. company that specializes in information security and cybersecurity training. He's also the CEO of CounterHack and appears as a cybersecurity expert on the PBS series Nova. Ed got started in the computer security area while in college, and after graduating, he found work at Bellcore, a division of the Bell system. Following a stint in operator services, he jumped into computer security, helping respond to attacks against phone company networks. Ed then branched out to work with large banks, major high-tech firms, and other Fortune 500 companies. Later, he started performing incident response and penetration testing for government agencies and military customers. He received his master's in information networking from Carnegie Mellon in 2002, and he holds a bachelor's in electrical engineering from the University of Michigan, which he earned in 1991. So please join me in welcoming Ed Skoudis to the conference.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's great to see you all today. I am super excited about being here. This is a brand new presentation. I've never done it before. I wrote it over the last week, but have been thinking about this kind of stuff for several years. I would like to introduce my co-presenter here as well. Alexa, hello.
Hi there.
So we've not rehearsed this, me and Alexa, and as far as I know, I've been to all 4 retreat conferences, and I think this is the first time, Dr. Maurer, you can confirm this, that you've had an AI co-present that you know of. Okay, all right, so let's go ahead and begin. The presentation is called I, for One, Welcome Our New AI Overlords. There's a lot going on with machine learning and AI, and I'd like to analyze some of these ideas and some of the consequences and some of the security issues that come up with these technologies. So I'm Ed, and I'm a hacker. I already had the introduction earlier, so I'll just be very brief here. I'm also a member of the Montreat Cybersecurity Advisory Council, and I'm very proud to be a part of that council. There's so many of the fellow council members here helping to help Montreat and guide it in how it puts together the fantastic curriculum they have. It's great to work with the faculty. And yesterday, we had a nice little reception with the students, and that's the joy of coming here for me. I mean, I like to present, I like to meet with Dr. Maurer and the staff and such, but it's the students that are just so wonderful to meet and just see and hear their ideas and where they're going. All right. So, the title of my talk, I, for One, Welcome Our New AI Overlords. Maybe you've heard that meme before. Does anybody know where that's from? I, for One, Welcome Our whatever overlords. Anybody remember? From The Simpsons. Thank you. So few people know that. So, it was back in 1994, season 5 of The Simpsons, that Homer Simpson was selected to be an astronaut, just a common person astronaut, sent up into space on a space station, and on the space station, they had a colony of ants, just common ants, so that they could see how they perform in weightlessness. Homer's eating potato chips, as Homer would do, and he accidentally smashes the test tubes that contain the ants. So the ants are flying around in weightlessness, and this is what happens. I'm setting this up so you can understand why I called this talk what I called it. All right, so here we go. And I hope we have audio for this.
We're just about to get our first pictures from inside the spacecraft with average not Homer Simpson. And we'd like to... Ladies and gentlemen, we've just lost the picture, but what we've seen speaks for itself. The Corvair spacecraft has apparently been taken over, conquered, if you will, by a master race of giant space ants.
A little ant.
It's difficult to tell from this vantage point whether they will consume the captive Earthmen or merely enslave them. One thing is for certain, there is no stopping them. The ants will soon be here. And I, for one, welcome our new insect overlords. I'd like to remind them that as a trusted TV personality, I can be helpful in rounding up others to toil in their underground sugar caves.
So I, for one, welcome our new AI overlords. And if they need any help in rounding up, well, never mind, you get the idea. All right, so the concept here is AI is moving forward very rapidly in ways that are kind of disturbing. I try to poke a little bit of fun at it, but there's a lot going on here that we need to focus on. We'll start, though, by looking at cloud-based storage. That's where I want to start and move our way into the AI realm. Before we get into AI, let's talk about things like Amazon S3 buckets. How many people here are familiar with Amazon S3 buckets? Oh, very good. How about Microsoft Azure Cloud Storage? Good. Google Cloud Storage? Anybody using that? Excellent. So the idea here is if I have many, many terabytes and want to store them in the cloud and have them automatically backed up, I can use any one of these services to do so. Fantastic. What could possibly go wrong? Well, cloud-based data breaches. If you go back over the last 2 years, there have been a huge number of these things. In fact, there is a wonderful article called Leaky Buckets, the 10 worst Amazon S3 breaches. That's just the 10 worst. There's dozens and dozens of the darn things. One of the first one that got a lot of notoriety was back in October 2016. Uber was storing a bunch of its data for riders as well as drivers in an Amazon S3 bucket. Now, it was all secured with a password. That password, though, was hard-coded into some code that they had made available publicly on GitHub. So you could go to their GitHub repository, grab their code, it would have the password so that then you could access all of the data for 57 million riders and drivers. Oops, it happens, right? July 2017, Verizon's been hit with this a couple of different times. They leaked 6 million records of their customers. September 2017, a little over a year ago, the US Army exposed 100 gigabytes of military data on an Amazon S3 bucket. February 2018, so this year, Bongo, which is a company that was bought by FedEx, they exposed 119,000 scanned driver's license and passports. Now, what do you notice about all 4 of these examples that I've given you? What's the common cloud provider underneath them? Amazon S3 buckets. Now, I don't want to pick on Amazon specifically, right, Alexa? Yeah, she just acknowledges. Yeah, we don't want to pick on her. But the fact is, Amazon S3 buckets have been hit really hard with this because it's easy to find them and easy to find if they're pretty much open and unlocked. But let's say you're the richest man in the world, like Jeff Bezos, and this happens to you over the space of a year. It happens to one of your main products. What do? You spend lots of money and make the problem go away. And if you look, this problem has dissipated significantly. It was a huge issue about a year to a year and a half ago, but it has gotten a lot better because they're focused on this and trying to fix this problem. We're going to look at some of the ways that they're doing that shortly. Most of this problem is due to simple misconfiguration. They aren't hardening the buckets appropriately. So if only there was some way that we could automate the discovery of buckets that aren't properly secured and buckets that are containing very sensitive data. Wouldn't that be awesome? So, security and the cloud. Security's hard. I mean, that's why we're all here, is to figure out innovative ways to better manage risk and to harden the security of our environments. That's what Retreat is all about. And to help other people develop their skills and careers in that. Doing security at scale, especially cloud scale, is really hard. All the different avenues of entry into the cloud and all the different avenues of egress from the cloud. But maybe there are certain properties of the cloud itself that we can leverage to help improve security. First of all, multi-tenancy. That is, there's multiple different customers using the cloud. Maybe educational institutions, government agencies, commercial companies, all using the cloud. And what we learn from maybe an attack against one group of those tenants might help us to defend some of the other tenants. It becomes a big data situation. There's lots of information coming in. We can use machine learning to see what normal access is and then look for deviations from that norm. The idea here is my detection of an attack against a given tenant can help you prevent those attacks against other tenants. Do you see? My detection becomes your prevention. Awesome idea. And we have very big, rich companies like Amazon, like Google, like Microsoft, that have lots of AI researchers that they can put on this problem. And that leads to 3 different approaches I'd like to summarize for you here of using AI to help secure cloud-based data storage. First one I want to talk about is Amazon Macie. Anybody here familiar with Amazon Macie? A few? If you aren't familiar with it yet, I think it is the future of this stuff. If this is the first time you've heard of it, good. Makes me happy that you've heard of it. Because going forward, I think you're going to see a lot more like this Amazon Macie. It's the most fully developed of the ideas I'm about to describe to you, okay? Amazon has spent a ton of money on this. Next, we're going to talk about Microsoft Azure threat detection. Anybody using that? Okay, so a few people there. We'll talk about that and kind of how it differs from what Amazon's doing with Macie. And then finally, Google Cloud's data loss prevention API. Anybody here using that? Okay, a couple people over here and there. I want to look at each of these different approaches. Each is applying machine learning and AI to securing large data sets in the cloud. So let's talk about each one of them, starting with Amazon Macie. So, say you've got an Amazon S3 bucket, or a whole bunch of them. They got all kinds of data in there. You don't even know what your people are putting in there. So wouldn't it be cool if we could say, hey, let's put some AI on this and have it look through all of my data to tell me where my most sensitive data is, which buckets it's in, and whether it's properly secured. Wouldn't that be awesome? I mean, humans can't do this at this scale for any sort of reasonable cost. But the machines can. I, for one, welcome our new AI overlords. They can do this kind of stuff. So Amazon Macie will crawl through all of your data and then categorize what is your most sensitive data. You can look at some of these categories up here. Confidential markings. It'll say, OK, here's documents you have in your Amazon S3 buckets that are confidential because you've labeled them as such. Well, that's kind of a gimme. That's pretty easy. But there's all kinds of other stuff here, too. Large number of IPv4 addresses. So here's certain data sets you have in your bucket that have lots of IPv4 addresses. What might that be? Thoughts? Maybe logs? Maybe packet captures? Yeah, good, good. I want to know where that stuff is. It could have sensitive data in it. AWS access keys, AWS credentials, AWS secret keys. It will find those if they're in your buckets, because those are very sensitive. They're used to access other buckets and so forth. Once it's identified your most sensitive data, Macie will then use another function available from Amazon called CloudWatch. And it will watch to see the access that is happening of your most sensitive data and alert you if it detects anomalous access. It learns what normal access of your data is in your environment and then tells you, here's bad-looking access of particularly sensitive stuff. Wow, pretty cool. Now, I'm going to put the pricing up for each one of these things, not because I care specifically about the dollars, but the pricing model here, I think, says a whole lot about these different companies' views of the services they're providing and what the future looks like. So notice, the price here is $5 per gigabyte protected, and then $4 per 100,000 events measured. So it's based on, yeah, that's per month. So it's based on the data itself, dollars per data. Remember that, because Microsoft doesn't do it that way, and Google doesn't do it that way. All right, cool. So that's Amazon Macie. A little more details here. It shows you a nice graph saying, hey, here's the kinds of access that I've been seeing of your systems. Green is pretty reasonable, nothing to be too scared about. Red and orange get a little more concerning because they're deeper access of more sensitive data and also changing configurations. So real nice view up there. Also, I can drill down, you see on the right-hand side, and get to the details of specific kinds of access and alerts in the environment. So that's Amazon Macie. What do you think about that, Alexa? She's still listening. All right. Next, Microsoft Azure SQL Database Threat Detection. So this, we'll get back to you in just a minute. So this one here is Microsoft Azure, and they use machine learning to go through your event logs. That's where they're focused, just the event logs. Notice Amazon's going through your data and then the logs. Here, they're looking at the logs, looking for suspicious access, anomalous queries, potential vulnerabilities or misconfigurations in your SQL Server databases in Azure, and finally, SQL injection attacks. They're actually looking for specific attacks. Very nice service. Notice the pricing model here, $15 per database per month. Microsoft is selling this based on cloud-based SQL Server instances, which to me seems kind of like an unusual way to do it, but it also looks like the way if you were one of the most successful software firms of the last 40 years, you'd probably just do it this way, right? Microsoft perfected itself, built itself on selling software. Now they're moving to the cloud, and they're selling their service as something that you configure in software that runs on the cloud. It's a very Microsoftian way of viewing it. So with Amazon, the price is based on the data. With Microsoft, it's based on the database instance. What about for Google? Google has their data loss prevention API. It's an API. It's not really a service that they provide, but instead, they have an API that you can write code to and call their API saying, is this particularly sensitive data or not? And if it is particularly sensitive data, give it extra protection. In fact, here's a document that they show where you could upload files into your Google Cloud instance, call some cloud functions, including this specific API, and it will determine whether this has sensitive data in it or not, using, again, machine learning to characterize that, and then classify it and storing it appropriately with the predefined levels of encryption. Interesting. Now, how do they price this? The pricing structure is really complicated. It is actually a whole algorithm that they have, and it would take me 2 or 3 slides to go through the entire algorithm. Let me just suffice it to say that it's based on inspection units, that's where they're looking at the data, and transformation units, that's where they're encrypting the data or altering it in some way for you, like masking out credit card numbers and such like that. And there's this complex formula that combines together inspection units with transformation units, and you get 10 giga-units for free, and then it's 30 cents per giga-unit after that. What? What this means is Google is pricing it as an API call. Well, how many API calls are you going to make? I don't know. Google doesn't know. But they are looking at it like a software service provider in the cloud. Of these 3 approaches, I just find each one fascinating because I think they summarize what these companies are thinking about with respect to what really matters. Amazon is focused on the data. Microsoft is focused on the database server. Google is focused on the API, okay? But each of them is providing similar kinds of things. The issue with Google, though, is you have to write your own code to call their API, whereas Amazon's, by far, is the most automated, just takes care of stuff for you. And I think that's because they had so many breaches a year and a half ago. They said, we got to make this really simple and get it out really fast. Cool. All right, so in a competitive business climate, let's think about what's going on here. You, say a business person, have a bunch of sensitive data that you have decided to store in the cloud, and now you're using cloud-based AI services to go through your data and tell you where your most sensitive data is, and that's the view you have of access to the data. In other words, the AI is telling you if your data is being attacked or if it's not being attacked, if it's safe, who's accessing it, when they're accessing it. But what if you compete with that cloud provider? You say, well, why would I ever compete with my cloud provider? Are you in retail? If you're in retail, you compete with Amazon. I mean, everybody in retail competes with Amazon. And even if you're not in retail, you compete perhaps with services. Amazon is increasingly providing services. Let's say you're a company called Netflix. Netflix, most of their infrastructure runs in AWS. It is Amazon-provided infrastructure. They're starting to move away from that. Netflix is starting to build its own content delivery network, but you're so dependent on Amazon right now. And then there's many other service providers that are likewise so dependent on Amazon. Amazon is growing super big in this realm. Are you guys familiar with Goldman Sachs Elevator Twitter account? Anybody ever heard of that one? So it's a parody account on Twitter. And the idea there is that this high-level executive at Goldman Sachs, the financial firm, just overhears people who work at that firm saying things in the elevator, and then he tweets what he's heard them say. It's parody, it's fiction, it's not really what he's heard there. But it has this attitude of sort of this corporate business titan, you know, kind of ruling over the universe, right? But Goldman Sachs Elevator, the tweets are pretty funny, but he had one that came out a couple years ago that I thought was really profound. Look at this tweet. If Amazon is in your line of business, sell now. Why? Because Amazon's going to kill you, right? If Amazon's not in your line of business, sell now. Because your business sucks. Yeah. So the point here is Amazon will move into every business. Health insurance? They've talked about it. Prescription medication? Oh yeah, they're thinking about that. All kinds of stuff. You think Amazon's not in your business now? Give them time. Just wait. Yeah. So now, thankfully, Amazon must be run, you know, with full ethics, right? I mean, they would never use the cloud-based AI that's combing through all of your data, telling you what's important, telling you who's accessed your data. they would never use that to compete with you. They'll keep that completely separate, of course, right? You see the ethical dilemma here as you increasingly put all of your data up into these cloud providers. And look, the man didn't become the richest man in the world by accident. Jeff Bezos is a very smart dude. Okay, so a way to think about the big four. I actually saw an article. I did the illustration here, but I saw an article that quoted Scott Galloway, who's a professor at NYU, that kind of summarized the different approaches that the big four are using to engage the marketplace. And what do I mean by the big four? I'm talking about the big four cloud providers. All right? And I find this just a really useful way for me to even kind of separate what each one is in my head. So we start with the top, and that is Google. And Scott Galloway said, you know, Google is kind of like, it's like your brain or your mind. It's the things you're thinking about and maybe wanting to learn more about, so you do Google searches for them. So, and Google search is AI, right? I mean, it's using all kinds of interesting machine learning and AI algorithms to try to deliver you the most meaningful results as quickly as it can. So Google is, in effect, an extension of your brain. All right, what's next? Next, of the big four, we have Facebook. Facebook is your heart. Facebook is your friends, your family, your kids, right? It's kind of that thing that keeps you all warm and happy and fuzzy and nice and your emotions, you know, humming along well. So that's Facebook. All right, what's next? Amazon. Amazon is your belly, right? It's the thing that consumes. It's the thing that needs to be fed. It's I want to buy this, and I want to buy that, and I need some of those, and I'm hungry too, so you buy this and you buy that. So you can see we've got 3 of the big four up here. Google's your brain, Facebook's your heart, Amazon's your belly, and the final one of the big four, described by Scott Galloway, is Apple. Apple is your sensuality. Apple is the thing that looks so beautiful, so amazing. And you say, but I don't buy Apple products. I buy something else. Don't worry, your product will look like an Apple product. Just give it a year or two, right? So they define what looks sexy, if you will, right? So just different ways of thinking about those big four, all of whom have large cloud-based instances that are gathering all kinds of data from us all the time. So do you trust these companies, those big four companies? Do you? I would suggest if you use them, you do trust them, but do you ever think about how much you trust them? Let's just think about some stuff that's happened recently with each of those companies. Does anybody know who this person is up on the left? It's the CEO of Google. Do you know his name? Yeah? Sundar? Hey, Alexa, who is Google's CEO? Oh, come on. It worked yesterday.
Google's chief executive officer is Sundar Pichai.
Sundar Pichai. Thank you. Thank you. So that was very nice. So does anybody know where this screenshot came from? There was a video that was taken of a meeting that happened shortly after the 2016 election, in which Google's senior leadership, this was a private video meant only to be in the company, but it leaked out a few weeks ago. Google's senior leadership were very upset about what happened in the election. And here's Sundar presenting at that session. Also Larry Page presented at the session. Several other Google senior leaders did. And they said, what happened in the 2016 election they were very upset about. And they said, we have to leverage our platform to make sure that never happens again. So very interesting, very interesting. All right, next one. Does anybody know who this person is? Mark Zuckerberg. Does anybody remember where this screenshot came from, what video it was? Yeah, it came out in March of 2018 that there was a company called Cambridge Analytica, who's still in business, by the way. You can contract with them if you'd like. But Cambridge Analytica had done some work on behalf of the Trump presidential election campaign back in 2016. What they did is they crawled through Facebook, grabbed a whole bunch of data to do some really fascinating data analytics, to look for certain trends and certain associations that are completely counterintuitive to us as humans, but to apply data analytics and AI to try to determine things. And they came up with some weird stuff. For example, one of the examples that they gave publicly was this. No offense to anybody who likes certain kinds of candy bars here, okay? This is just the example they gave, and I want to tie it into their example. And if you like certain kinds of shoes, don't be upset about what I'm about to say, okay? But they found that if you like Kit Kats, and you, Kit Kat candy bars, and you like Nike shoes, there is a much higher likelihood that you will like something that says, I hate Israel. What is it about Kit Kat bars and Nike? We don't know. But the point is, they don't care. Politicians don't care that that's a fact. That is a fact. But they can use that fact. Why? Because they might be able to put ads in your Facebook feed or put things maybe in your Twitter feed or what have you to incent you to go out to vote or disincent you to go out to vote, right? So the idea is if you can say that because this person likes, XYZ kind of automobile, he or she is more likely to vote this way or that way. Well, if I know that, I can try to encourage that person to go out to vote by putting things in their timeline, ads and such, that talk about how great voting is. Or, if I don't want them to vote, I put things in their timeline that says, hey, your vote's kind of worthless, it's meaningless, it doesn't really mean anything. Why bother? So, Cambridge Analytica, all that stuff came out in March of 2018, and a few weeks later, they brought good old Mark Zuckerberg up to Congress so he could testify. If you look at this man's entire business model, every chance he has had to violate privacy and advance his business or not, he has chosen to dispense of privacy for now to advance the business and to ask for forgiveness later. Every single major point in the evolution of Facebook has been that. We'll see if they change based on what's happened recently, but that's where they've been. So here we've got Google, that's your brain. Here we've got Facebook, that's your heart. Next one of the big four, Amazon. Does anybody recognize that picture? That's Jeff Bezos, plus. Yeah, the dude, you remember the pictures that we saw of him like back in the 90s and he had an Adam's apple that was like bigger than his head and such? His Adam's apple's still pretty big, but the rest of him is now too. This is like, bodybuilding Jeff Bezos. The man showed up for a meeting of corporate leaders and he walked into that meeting like that and people are like, what happened to him? Well, he's the world's richest man. It depends on the day. Some days when the market's up, he's the world's richest man. Occasionally he dips down to the second richest man. So he's up and down, right? But he's been taking care of his health, which I guess is a good thing to say, right? So there you go. There's Amazon. That's your belly. Now, I mentioned that there's these big four that all have cloud-based services. They're all doing detailed data analysis of us and at least manipulating us to buy certain products and such. But I'm missing one. Which one's not up here of the big four? Apple. So what's going on with Apple? Did you see what happened last week? Last week, there was a meeting of privacy regulatory people in Europe. It was the International Conference of Data Protection and Privacy Commissioners, and it was in Brussels just last week. And Tim Cook, CEO of Apple, got up in front of the audience, and look what he said. Our own information, from the everyday to the deeply personal, is being weaponized against us with military efficiency. He went further. He said, we shouldn't sugarcoat the consequences. This is surveillance. He's talking about the other three of the big three. So this is one of the big four saying those other three, what they're doing is unconscionable. And these stockpiles of personal data serve only to enrich the companies that collect them. So that's what your sensuality is telling you now. What do we make of this? Now, you could be a cynic, and you could say, well, look, the reason he's talking about this in the way that he is because his job is to sell you phones. Now, Macintosh people say, yeah, and computers. Yeah, a few of those too. I'm a Macintosh guy, but phones is where the money is. Apple makes so much more money on phones. You say iTunes, they make money on phones, okay? So he's selling you nice, fancy objects. Yes, he has iCloud. He does have a big cloud behind it. But you could say the only reason he's attacking those other ones is their business models depend on them monetizing the private data they've gotten from you, and his business model does not. That's sort of the cynic view. Saying the same thing but without maybe a cynical hat, Apple could have built a business model that was more like the other ones when they first launched iCloud and such, but they didn't. Instead, the profit margins were so great on the phones, they decided to focus on that. But still, they chose not to go that route of monetizing the private data. So it's interesting to see this battle. There is a battle among the big four right now where three of them are on one side and one is on the other side. Now, Apple happens to be the largest by market capitalization company in the world. Yesterday, it popped just below, because the stock came down $7 a share. It dropped below $1 trillion. In market capitalization. It's the first company that's ever had $1 trillion market capitalization, by the way, which just happened in the last month. Yesterday it dropped slightly down. It was like $993 billion for a market cap. Whew. Interesting stuff. Wow. Okay. So Tim Cook just used the word weaponization with military efficiencies. Now, I talked about the weaponization of big data with respect to Cambridge Analytica for election purposes. There's other stuff. Did you see the announcement that just came out last week? I was so excited when I was working on this talk because all these new things were just coming out. October 2018, last week, it was announced that Russian firms who build facial recognition software for the Russian government have crawled through Facebook, pulled down pictures of all of us, and who knows what they're going to do with them. I mean, their business is facial recognition. So they can look at you and say, oh, I know that is, I'm not going to say your name, but I know that's that person. Interesting stuff. This was, Facebook was unhappy when it was discovered that the Russian firms had done this, but they didn't stop it from happening proactively. Yeah. And then back in 2015, I have a lot of friends who work for the US federal government, a lot of friends with clearance. Back in 2015, there was the big breach of OPM, government agency that collects information and helps process clearance applications so you can get data security clearance. 5.6 million fingerprints were stolen in that hack. So think about that. Your fingerprint, that uniquely identifies you, right? Well, unless you're somebody who's gone to get government clearance, who are supposed to be our most sensitive and trusted people, but now their fingerprints are in the hands of an adversarial country. It's crazy stuff, crazy stuff. So weaponization of this stuff. So who else has this kind of information? I was thinking about the big four, really kind of focusing on each one of them, and I was thinking, the data they have is not completely unique to just them. Government tax agencies also have this kind of data. I mean, very sensitive stuff about everything that you're up to. Also, credit card companies, if you think about it. I mean, they have all of your purchases, and they could have used that to try to market and such for you. But we don't worry so much about these organizations. Maybe government tax collectors, you're worried about that, right? But I mean, not in the same way that people seem to worry about what Amazon, Google, or especially Facebook are doing with all of their data. And I try to think about why. Here's my theory. Why don't we worry about these organizations as much as we worry about the big four, at least three of the big four? And I think it's because those big four, all of those companies, view their mission as to fundamentally change what it means to be human, right? To just say, hey, we're going to remake society in a better way. I mean, that's Mark Zuckerberg says his goal of Facebook is to remake society and the way we communicate in a positive way. He thinks this could be a great thing. Or Google. I mean, the first person to really talk about technology changing society fundamentally, putting a dent in the universe was Steve Jobs, founder of Apple. It's built into the DNA of those big four companies to try to change society in very fundamental ways, and from their perspective, in very positive ways. Whereas I don't think tax agencies or credit card companies think of themselves in those same terms. And therefore, they kind of put a check on their own activities that way. All right. Next. So thinking about this weaponization, which was the word that Tim Cook used, military efficiency, again, phrase used by Tim Cook, there is a class at Princeton University, and I've actually done a guest lecture in this class for the last 4 years. And the class covers modern forms of warfare and weaponry. It's a fascinating class. It's so cool. Anyway, the course covers things like this. Nuclear weapons. What are some of the public policy implications of nuclear weapons? Chemical weapons, biological weapons. It's not a technical class. It's actually built for public policy majors, people who might go into politics or regulatory compliance or things like that. Biological weapons. And then I got involved when 4 years ago they added cyber warfare to the list of things covered by the class. And I'd go each time and do a guest lecture for these students about what's happening in the militarization of cyberspace, especially from the US perspective. But this year, just this year, they added another topic to the class. AI, machine learning, and superintelligence. So you can see where this is headed, right? I mean, the militarization of not just cyberspace itself, but the application of AI and superintelligence to that. Now, the class is pretty much focused on battlefield environments and whether AI should be allowed to make kill decisions for humans. That's where they're focused right now. But I think you could see there are bigger, that's important. I'm not trying to dismiss that as an important issue to be thought about, but that's not what I'm focused on here. What I'm focused on here is unleashing AI to learn so much detail about us and possibly manipulate us for commercial purposes or political purposes, right? So, in a world where both data and AI can and is being weaponized, what does this mean to you as an individual? Have you thought about this much? What does your AI know about you? Alexa, how are you doing today?
I'm quite cheerful, probably because I've been thinking about my favorite animal.
Oh, that's nice. She's been thinking about her favorite animal. Alexa, what's your favorite animal?
Seahorses make me smile, mostly because I can't help but picture sea monkey cowboys riding them across the ocean, into the sunset.
She seems to love that joke. That's the 6th time she's told it to me in 2 days. But do you realize, though, I don't know if you've seen this, but how many people here have an Echo or an Echo Dot or have Alexa in their life somewhere? Okay. You know, if you are the administrator over that Amazon account, you can go in and see everything that's been asked of your given Alexa. Never mind. Okay? Did you know that? You can go in and see everything that's been asked. I have a couple of Echoes in my office. I actually have 4 total in my house. I was talking to a friend of mine, Josh Wright, last week. He says, "You only have 4 in your house? I figured you'd have a lot more than that." And I said, "Well, the microphones on them are really good, so I don't really need more." But everything I ask of her is put into my Amazon account. And I have employees that work in my house, and they will sometimes talk to Alexa when I'm not there. And I can look and see everything they said to her. You could apparently also do this with OK Google as well and see everything that's been asked in that account. Siri does not provide that functionality. You can't see what's been asked on your Siri account. Interesting. So what does your AI know about you? Does it know when you wake up? I mean, if you set an alarm with it, it probably does. Or when you first start talking to it in the morning. Or does it know where you like to eat, maybe, because you're constantly doing searches for the kinds of food that you like or the restaurants that you like? Does it know where you go to work? Does it know where you go after work? Does it know where you vacation? Probably does, of course, right? Does it know what you like to watch on TV? Does it know the movies that you like? I heard this analogy of YouTube that just was so powerful, I thought it was just amazing. So what is YouTube? You're like, it's a video service. Let me recharacterize it a little bit. YouTube is an AI that is watching you watch it. And it looks to see what kinds of things hold your attention. And when you stop watching it, it learns to say, I won't make that mistake again. I'm going to try to keep your attention for as long as I possibly can. Because that's how they make money. So YouTube is an AI that watches you watch it and makes decisions about how to keep you focused on it as long as possible. This business model is almost exactly the same as slot machines in Las Vegas, right? Keep you focused, keep you not thinking about anything else in the outside world, keep you zoomed into that. Does your AI know what you search for? Yep. I mean, you search with an AI, and it maintains a history of what you've searched for. All right. So let's think about the most popular websites. There was a survey that came out. This is based on data from September 1st, 2018, so about a month and a half ago, almost 2 months ago now, I guess. And this is just in the United States. I filtered it to focus on the US because there's a lot of Chinese websites in there because there's just a lot of people there. But look at each of these top 11 most used websites. As you might expect, Google is number 1. If you look at each one of these, each one has a search feature and is using AI functionality in association with helping to deliver to you the content that you're looking for. Facebook is number 2, YouTube is number 3, Amazon number 4, so that's pretty good. Notice that we've got 3 of the big 4 up there. Apple's not up there, but those other 3 are. In fact, Google is number 1 and number 3 because, of course, Google owns YouTube. It's number 5, which is Yahoo, which is a little surprising that Yahoo's still up there, but hey, good for them. And then number 6, look at that. How about that? Yeah, and number 7. In fact, 3 of the top 10 are adult websites. That's kind of depressing. The big message I take away from this one is use Wikipedia more, please. Right? Because, I mean, it's I included that one because I didn't want to end with number 10 like that. Yeah, but each one of these has search capabilities and a built-in AI function. Imagine the AI function at Pornhub and what it is learning about its users. That's crazy stuff. All right, so AI and you add all this up, and what does it mean? A couple thoughts. Does your AI know more about you than your friends do? I would suggest, yeah, absolutely it does. Why? Because you do Google searches for stuff that you would never talk to your friends about. And I'm not necessarily saying some sort of adult-themed things. I'm talking about maybe you think you have some illness, right? And you're looking to see the symptoms. You might not tell your friends that, but you tell your AI that, right? Or you have some deep felt thought about some sort of philosophical or theological thing. You might do a Google search for it, right? Does your AI know more about you than your pastor does? Might you do Google searches for things that you don't kind of want to bring up to your pastor because it's just more efficient that way, or because you don't want your pastor to know that you're questioning certain things? Does your AI know more about you than your spouse does? You think? Maybe? Does your AI know more about you than you do? I would suggest it does. Yeah. There's some interesting features that they are planning on adding to Alexa. Never mind. So it's a feature where Alexa will listen to your voice, and it will try to determine if it thinks you have a cold, just based on the tone of your voice and how it's changed, and then suggest to you treatment options, including certain medications that you should buy on your Amazon account. Isn't this great? Yeah. So does your AI know more about you than you know about yourself? Oh, and wait, do you share more about yourself with your AI than you do with your God? Sorry, I get little chills here myself, yeah. Whew. Okay, so let's think about where this kind of stuff is headed. If you look, my friend Josh Wright, I went through this whole presentation with him last week, and he heard me as I was going through the presentation. Every time I'd mention Alexa, I would say, never mind. And he said, never mind. He said, I didn't know you could say never mind. I always say, Alexa, cancel. And I'm like, oh, no, you just say never mind to it. And he's like, well, how did you know that? I said, I don't know. I was just one day talking to her, and that happened. And he said, it's interesting how you talk to Alexa versus how I talk to Alexa. Because he talks to Alexa as though it's a computer. Alexa, cancel. He said, you are much more conversational and friendly with Alexa because she's just an entity in my life. Think about what I say to her when I trigger her accidentally, which I do 27 times a day. I say, never mind, because that's more conversational than Alexa, cancel. But also think about the etymology. I hadn't thought about this until Josh pointed it out to me last week. Never mind. There's an implication there that she is minding to me or has a mind, and I want that to go away just temporarily. And then you think about younger generations of people. I tell you, I'm at the point right now when I walk into a hotel room, and I travel a whole lot. When I walk into a hotel room, I'm annoyed that I can't talk to the lights. I just expect to be able to say, turn the lights on, and they come on. And some of my friends are there as well. So, and think about the pervasiveness of AI. AI in your house. I have 4 Echo products in my house right now. I've got a whole bunch of Siri devices. Siri's not all that great, at least compared to Alexa and how many features they're adding to her. So AI throughout your house, maybe you have that. AI in your car. You know Amazon is really trying to get Alexa, never mind, in cars, right? So you can call up radio shows and things like that and buy things at Amazon. AI in your pocket, right? Maybe your cell phone. And at some point, AI effectively becomes omnipresent. You could just walk around and talk to it and ask it questions like, who's the CEO of Google? And it'll just tell you. And it's just constantly there in your life, ready to answer any question you might ask. And as it learns more and more about you and learns more and more about the rest of the world, in addition to becoming effectively omnipresent, it's going to seem downright omniscient, so that you could walk into the room and say, Alexa, let there be light, and there will be. Last night, a very good friend of mine, Robert M. Lee is his name. He's a great, great guy. He's one of the leading industrial control system experts for security in the United States. He tweeted this last night at, I guess it was yesterday, and I saw it last night, and I said, dude, I'm doing a talk tomorrow. Can I put that in my talk? Because it illustrates a point that I'm trying to make. My son said his first words today, and they were, hey, Google. I don't think he was kidding. I talk to Alexa, never mind, all day long, and just ask her to do things, ask her questions. It's very conversational, very interactive, and I think for younger people, that's going to become more and more and more the case. So how can they differentiate in their head this omnipresent, practically omniscient being that follows them everywhere and answers their every question and delivers everything to their mind, their heart, their belly, and their sensuality, this is a problem. Notice that I haven't really mentioned, except for a little brief thing, killer robots. Nope. So what can you do? What can you do? What's the upshot of all this stuff? Be careful of what data you share. What? Really? Yeah, think about it. Here's how I try to think about it. When you go and do a search on Google, think that you are giving that data to the people of Google. Because if you think about it as just the Google search engine, it's a machine, it doesn't personalize it. But you're giving your data to that company that says, we're going to leverage our platform to make sure what happened in 2016 election will not happen again. Okay, you're giving them your data. Or, Facebook, you're giving Mark Zuckerberg your data, and he's making business decisions based on that. Or when Amazon, when you do searches for products that maybe you don't even want to buy, you just want to see if such a product exists, you're giving information to the richest man in the world. I think personifying it makes it more visceral for me and gives me maybe a better understanding of what's really happening and possible here. You could use alternative search providers. Like, I got really upset with Google about a year ago, and I decided I was going to switch to one search provider that I thought would have, better privacy, and I went to DuckDuckGo. Does anybody here use DuckDuckGo? Yeah, I didn't use it on my computer, because on my computer I need really the best professional grade search results I can get, and that is Google. But I put it on my phone and my iPad, and it drove me bonkers. It wasn't giving me good enough results. I'd have to dig around a lot more. It was wasting a lot of my time. So I switched my phone over. My iPad is still on DuckDuckGo, but my phone is now on Bing, and I'm getting better results with that. All right? For videos, you could use Vimeo. I went through this presentation with my 17-year-old son. He's like, Dad, Vimeo doesn't have anything I want to see. It's like, yeah, that's kind of the problem, isn't it? Or email. There's so many different email providers that you could use, but most people use Gmail. We just do. Now, you could support vendors that respect your privacy and flee those that don't. In fact, my good friend Dave Kennedy. Dave Kennedy is the guy who runs DerbyCon. He also has a couple of companies, BinarySec and TrustedSec. They do fantastic work. He announced earlier this week that he was getting off of social media. He said it's just not worth his time, his attention. It's too painful and frustrating. He doesn't want to give all his data up to all these companies. So he announced just this week he's leaving social media. You can also build your own awareness, and if you're particularly interested in these kinds of issues, think about your privacy rights. And possibly, I'm not here to tell you you should get politically involved or anything like that, but you may want to use public discourse channels to make your thoughts known about this concern of pervasive loss of privacy with weaponization of AI. Oh, one more final thing before we finish. Last week, we do this thing every year called Holiday Hack Challenge. We give it away for free. It's a big virtual environment that you can go in and play and have fun and solve a Christmas caper. We launched last week the next phase of Holiday Hack Challenge 2018. It's called KringleCon. If you go to kringlecon.com, you can go there, have fun. We try every year to get 10,000 InfoSec professionals building their skills and learning about that at KringleCon. So check that out. You can go there today and start looking through it. It's all available for you. We're going to launch all the rest of it, though, second week of December. And that brings us to QA. I think we got a couple minutes for questions. Thoughts? Yes, ma'am.
Did you see where Amazon pulled their recruiting tool of AI?
I did not. Amazon pulled their recruiting tool of AI? Oh, I did see that because it had a gender imbalance. Yeah. So the lady's point was Amazon was using a recruiting tool to try to figure out, what engineers and other people that it should hire, but the results were much more gender imbalanced than the humans would be or than the company desired, so they just stopped using it. Or they're going to tweak it.
The key terms that it was looking for in the resume?
Yeah.
Like a woman is less likely to use the word superior for herself.
That's right. Yep. So the point is there were certain keywords that it was kind of keying on that sounded like superior or things like that, the lady cites, that tended to be more on male stuff. Did you see Microsoft did an experiment? It was about a year ago where they created an AI Twitter bot, and they put it on Twitter, and it started learning and just kind of interacting with people, and within, I think it was a space of about 20 hours, it became like an extreme Nazi fascist. It was so depressing, so depressing. 12 hours, is that what it was? It was such a short time. Oh, sad. Other questions? Yes, sir.
Why do you think people have such an outcry about the government Big Brother, but are so willing so willing to give the commercial big brother who's just trying to exploit you their public information, all your information?
The gentleman's question is, why do you think people are so concerned about government big brother, but aren't so worried about the separate companies that might be doing this and exploiting you? And I think, here's my thought, it's just an opinion. I think it's just a history of the thing. We've been worried about big brother from government. I mean, literally, you know, George Orwell's 1984, big brother was government, so therefore they're one and the same. These companies, though, there is an idea that they're competing with each other, but if you look carefully, the big four are very carefully centered in their lane. And occasionally one tries to step in the other one's lane. Google tried to step into Facebook's lane by creating, you know, the Google circles and all this stuff that Google wanted to become the new Facebook. Mark Zuckerberg jumped on a desk inside of Facebook headquarters and said, folks, this is war. We have to destroy everything that Google is doing that is trying to become Facebook. You have to make that ridiculous. Nobody should ever use that. We have to make it socially ostracized. This is an existential threat to Facebook. So each one stays in their lanes. Apple, you can make phones. That's very good. Google, you could do search and email and all these other things and sell your AdWords. Oh, AdWords. Facebook, you can, you know, have all the interactions and all the friends that you want. Each one of them stay in their lanes carefully. They sometimes try to sneak out a little bit, and they get beat back into their own lane. So the idea is each one's in a lane. So there is some limit on them, right? And then, historically, cyber technology has been so transformative and new revolutions happen. I mean, look, I'm old enough that I can remember when Microsoft ran the world. Have you heard, anybody here hear of Microsoft? Does anybody here use Cortana? Notice I didn't even mention Cortana here. Cortana's pretty good. Yeah, I just don't use it. Yeah, so I think that's why. That's my theories. Other questions? I don't know how much so looks like we have no time. Thank you so much for listening. I do appreciate it.